Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am about to spoil 9 books that you haven't read yet. So if you're not into that, then I'm sorry. You can click off. But if you're still here right now, then that means that you're in for a wild ride. These 9 books are some of my favorite books that I would definitely not recommend to you. I know that sounds so weird, but the content in some of these books, all 9 of these actually, is really weird, really messed up, really dark, and we're gonna talk about it all. The first book that I thoroughly enjoyed, I think I gave it 4 stars, was Where's Molly by H.G. Carlton. I think this was the first dark romance book that I read, and technically it's in the Haunting Adeline series by H.G. Carlton. I believe that this is like a spin-off of that. Yeah, no, you follow Molly, who went missing, and she was kidnapped, brutally kidnapped, and then she disappears while she's kidnapped, and Molly's out for revenge, and then there's like some weird smut scenes. I don't know. It was weird, but it was really enjoyable. I definitely don't recommend it for you, though. The other dark romance that is on this list, this is like dark. We thought Where's Molly was bad, but Still Beaming by Jennifer Hartman. This is bad and wrong and gives me the heebie-jeebies on so many different levels, so definitely don't read it. But you follow Cora, who is out at a bar. She's like very, very drunk. It's 2 a.m. It's closing time. She calls everyone to come pick her up, but no one is awake. And she finally calls Dean. And Dean picks up even though he was sleeping, and he's like, yeah, fine, I'll come pick you up. So he picks Cora up, and when Dean gets there to pick Cora up, this random guy is like, hey, are you 2 together? And he's like, no, absolutely not. And like he said it so instantaneously. So Dean is actually Cora's future brother-in-law. So Dean is marrying her sister. And they don't have any like romantic connections, you know, because it's her future brother-in-law. And so that guy that he was like, F no, I'm not with her. He decides to follow them, and he kidnaps both Dean and Cora and leaves them both in a basement, chained apart, but like in the same basement, just different cells and different chains. And then the vile, disgusting things that man does to Cora end to Dean is just sickening. Like, beyond sickening. Yeah, I don't know how to put it, like, as heavy of a scope that it really is. But during their time as hostages, this madman, this psychopath, makes Dean, you know, he has a gun to his head, makes him assault Cora. And it was so twisted and so messed up. And not only does it follow, like, what happens in that basement, which was disturbing on so many levels. Like, that just doesn't even graze. Like, it was horrifying. But when Dean is being, like, forced to assault his almost sister-in-law, they kind of fall in love. And, like, it doesn't feel like love. It feels like trauma, because obviously super traumatic. Like, a lot of trauma. This book made me sob. So I'm just putting that out there. But more than that, it was just disgusting and disturbing and vile and just so gross. So please don't read this one. Dean was so gentle with Cora too, and that, like, if you read this one, just know that I'm warning you that this book will change you. And also, like, I don't know how to even tell you anymore. It's heart-wrenching. It's heartbreaking. They do make it out of the madman's basement. And the aftermath of everything was crazy, because Dean and Cora's sister were gonna get married, but now he's like, I can't marry her because I'm in love with you. But they also can't be together because of the bad memories and the trauma. And honestly, Cora won't let her forgive herself, because she blames herself for Dean's and her sister's marriage never happening and not ever going on. So I think it's several years later and you finally learn, like, their aftermath. But it's honestly just a traumatic book about trauma and darkness. And honestly, don't read this. I will forever be affected by this book, and it has a special tender place in my heart. But at the same time, it's so bad. Like, I feel like the way I'm describing it is minimizing it so much. But it's horrific. Then I've read Off the Deep End by Lucinda Berry. And again, don't read this book. Actually, like, question all of Lucinda Berry's work. But this is by far the one that, like, don't read it. This is not a thriller. Not really. So you follow this mom named Jules, who was driving in the car with her son and her son's best friend when she took a wrong turn and ended up in the lake. She gets out in time to go back and save one boy. And when she gets up to the surface with the boy. He's like 14, 15. I don't know. He's 15, I think. When she gets up to the surface with this boy, she realizes that she grabbed the wrong boy, and this was her son's best friend. So she turns around to go back to the car to get her son, but she's too late because it took her too long. That's all that I knew about this book going into it. But when you read it, it's also, so it's the aftermath of that. And her son is dead. And she's obviously grieving the loss. But then there starts this unnatural, really bizarre relationship between her son's best friend. I don't even remember his name. It might be Ethan, but I don't remember. And her. And they start sleeping together. They start like a romantic relationship. And then it kind of goes into this like really bizarre place where I'm gonna go with Ethan. I don't know if that's really his name, but Ethan's mom wants to keep her away from Ethan because she finds out that they're having a relationship, and he is a child and she is not a child. She had a child his age. And, oh, yeah, and then there's like this police investigation about what actually happened to the car. And to be quite honest with you, that was my least favorite part of the story, was finding out what happened to her son. I mean, you know that he was dead. You know how he died from the very beginning. But they're investigating to see if, maybe Jules was like inebriated or anything like that. That was the worst part of the book. The most intriguing part was this relationship between a child and an adult, but at the same time, like, it made me squirm, and just it was gross. So again, don't read this book. Do not read this next book. This is The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim. Honestly, if you're gonna read any of them, do read The Eyes Are the Best Part, because this is the least gross. Okay, it's gross in a different way. These are gross and vile because of relationships that should not be relationships. The Eyes Are the Best Part is disturbing and gross because our main character gives, she starts having GWOWs. She starts having an obsession with eyeballs. There's nothing wrong with that until she starts eating human eyeballs. I get very heaved out when there's any kind of like food horror. Like, I can't handle it. I can't. But this is the only cannibalism book that I've read that I didn't hate. It was done so masterfully, but it's still very disturbing, very gross. It's also just a very, very slow horror novel. Like, nothing happens. It's all about our main character and her descent into madness and her obsession with eyes. And then she eats eyes. Like, really, I just told you the entire book. But if you're gonna read any of them, read this one. But please don't read these books. They don't Don't read Any Man by Amber Tamblyn. Here's the thing. I read this in 2025. It really did make it to my top 3 books of the year. Was it my top favorite? I don't remember. I loved this book, and I full-heartedly stand by loving this book. But don't read it. It's social commentary about assault, specifically like how men never come forward as victims, and they most definitely can be, was something that really stood out to me, along with the fact that this follows a string of assaults on men. And the assailant is a woman. And her name is... I told you, this is like all the spoilers that you need for these books. But her name is Mauve. And you get her perspective at the very end. I think her perspective is literally 2 pages, I believe. 1 page. 1 page. 1. You get 1 page from Mauve. After hearing about her and her assaults on these men, and you just get 1 measly page. It's not even a full page. It's like 2 paragraphs, I think. But it's, yeah, I get a measly 2 paragraphs from her. And I don't think I will ever understand her brain. Not that I would want to. I don't know. But this was so... It's like, we always hear in the media about women being assaulted. It's not something that we ever talk about men, but it's definitely something that could happen. Not only that, in this book, following these different men that have been victims, the media and the social commentary about how, well, if you weren't wearing that skin tight, like, white tank top or whatever, then maybe she wouldn't have liked you. Or if you weren't so buff, like a sports bro, then maybe Mauve would not have liked you. Maybe she wouldn't have had to assault you. And it just makes me really angry, honestly. And it makes me think about, like, real life, like social commentary about how when someone, all the victim shaming and all the, well, if you weren't wearing that short skirt, or, you know, things like that. And it just, like, this book completely wrecked me. But I really mean, don't read it. Like, don't put yourself through it, especially if you have triggers for that kind of thing, because that was so haunting and it was so disturbing, and like, panic attacks all the time reading this book. Like, I was looking over my shoulder and just like, it had me in a chokehold. Then we have Near the Bone by Christina Henry. Honestly, this one is not as bad as these ones. Again, you know, I'm not on the same playing field, but the worst, this follows Maddie, who finds a dead fox in the woods around her little cabin in the jungle, in the forest. And she runs into these men. I think she's trying to run away from the mutilated fox. she runs into these men and immediately gets super scared, and she runs back to the cabin. And then those men find her in this cabin, and they're like, no, we're here to rescue you, because there's apparently a big unknown monster out here in this forest. And she knows it because she saw the mutilated fox, and it was work of this monster. But more than that, you follow Maddie. This might be another slower one, because honestly, I didn't care about the monster. I did not care about the monster, and I didn't understand why Maddie wouldn't open up the doors for the two guys that were there. Like, I think they followed her to the cabin to rescue her, because, like, who would be up in a secluded cabin, like, by themselves, and especially when there's a monster on the loose? Like, why would you stay? You know, so it was like weird questions, but I never got the answers. I mean, I did towards the end of the book, but the first half of this book was weird. I was just confused as to what was going on. But then you slowly start to find out that Maddie's husband is an abusive a-hole. Yeah, he's abusive in all the wrong ways. So there's a lot of like domestic violence in this book, and that was my favorite part personally, but please don't read it, especially if you have triggers for that kind of thing, especially if you've lived through that kind of thing. I know it can be very daunting to read and everything, but this was just a bizarre book. Honestly, I didn't care about the monster. I felt like the monster was more of a metaphor for her husband, who you don't even see at all. So you're kind of wondering if she's like all there, or maybe she killed him, or what. But it's really, it was daunting for me to read. And it was awful being with Maddie as the domestic violence was happening. Whew. Please don't read these books. The next one that I don't want you to read, even though it's one of my favorites, is The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. This was the first book I read by Ashley Winstead, and it's a banger. So you follow Shay and her best friends, Laurel, and one other girl. But Laurel, Shay's best friend since college, has killed herself. And Shay doesn't believe that she actually killed herself. She said that her friend wouldn't do that. She wouldn't unalive herself. So she kind of low-key starts investigating, which takes us to like 10 years before Laurel's death. And Shay and Laurel and a couple of other girls are involved in this really bad relationship. So this one of their friends took them to her house to meet Daddy. And Daddy ends up being a pimp. And yeah, things happened and they get into that world of sex work, and Laurel and Shay barely got out. And that's why Shay doesn't believe that Laurel would just kill herself. So Shay goes back into the sex ring. And it's very disturbing. Like, things happened. It's so bad. It's so disturbing. So please don't read this book. But ultimately, Shay does find out that Laurel was killed. Not unalived herself, but was unalived by their old friend from college. She never got out of the sex ring. And now she's like the mob boss. And she's running the show. And she wanted to tie some loose ends by killing Shay and Laurel so that they can't talk. Even though it's been 10 years and they haven't talked yet. They weren't ever going to. They just wanted to leave it behind. It's got cult vibes to the max. But at the end of the day, it's really just a sex ring and like sex house. Yeah, no. It was so disturbing. I would compare it to like Karen Slaughter. But this one might be more worse. This one might be more vile. Okay, do you see what I'm putting down? Okay. The last two are nonfiction books that please don't read them. The first one is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Whoa. Talk about a tell-all about, oh my God, like this, I don't even want to call it a scandal, but the scandal that came out about Nickelodeon, especially like the producers and things to children. She was a child. Okay? That's all I'm saying. And like her mom forced her into show business. So she actually looks back at iCarly as some of the worst times in her life. For certain things that were happening behind the scenes, but also because her mom was abusive. Physically and mentally and emotionally. Like, her mom, like, made her go on these crazy diets where she wasn't allowed to eat for like 5 days straight. So when she was shooting iCarly, she hadn't ate in literal days. And they're like, yeah, no, just eat. And, you know, in front of everyone, her mom's like, yeah, go ahead and eat. But then when later, her mom was like, why'd you eat that banana? Like, why'd you eat an apple? You're not supposed to eat. No. It was crazy. It was madness. And the last one that I don't want you to read was Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This one, oh my God. This was horrifying. It's a nonfiction, it's a memoir about the brutal attack of Chanel Miller. And it's written in first person because it happened to her. And not only that, it's like, well, I woke up in the hospital 12 hours later, or I remember sitting at the computer just staring off into space, and it was 10 hours later when my roommate came home, or when my best friend, you know, and it seemed so realistic. Like, there are chunks of time that she couldn't explain what happened. She couldn't explain the passing of time. But in her mind, like, that 10 hours really happened. And like, she didn't move a muscle or say a word. And it was violating and gripping and horrifying because it's nonfiction, so it's true. And I don't know. It was the whole entire situation was just awful. And again, it speaks a lot about like social commentary on being assaulted. Obviously, Any Man is a work of fiction, so take it with a grain of salt, but know my name. This happened to someone. This happened to Chanel Miller. This was her life. And that's terrifying. Those are the books that I don't want you to read. But seriously, check all the triggers, because those are some of the most horrifying, panic-inducing books that I have ever read. And if you are triggered by anything that I talked about, don't read these books. If you're new around here, subscribe. I will see you in the next video.